Hi, and thanks for tuning in to the CBA Podcast, a place where we chat about our own recent achievements in the area of electronics, software and mechanical engineering, and more likely than not, give excuses for not having done anything at all. This episode will be about this podcast itself, the vintage Luctor multiset power supply, this week's efforts for the RetroChallenge 2018 April, disassembling a coffee machine, and upcoming events. Hi and welcome back to episode 20, which is in fact the 21st episode ever recorded. Now, maybe it's interesting to go through a little bit of what goes on while I make this brilliant podcast. First, maybe some stats. I think there are between 10 and 20 subscribers, and the episode that got by far the most downloads was the one about the scope segmented memory and laser cut stencils. And it was episode 13. That's about 40 downloads. I have no idea what's happening. Maybe someone forgot to turn off the auto download feature or whatever. But anyway, thank you very much for your interest. The way in which I normally record this is not very spectacular. I have a small USB microphone in which I'm talking right now. And what I do now, which seems to work quite well, is I talk in very small segments. And whenever I screw up, I whistle at the end of talking. And if I process the audio in Audacity, I can visually see when I screwed up. So I have 10 seconds minimum pause between segments. And if I see a segment ending with a loud amplitude or a strong amplitude, then I can simply delete that and assume it was screwed up. I recently put this podcast on YouTube as well to make it a bit more accessible. And the funny thing is that the introduction episode, which was about 1 minute, is downloaded quite a lot. And the rest not so much, so maybe it's like tasting something and realizing it's not so tasty at all. And before I forget, let's listen to this week's feedback. Yeah, but you can actually send feedback by using the email address on the podcast.cba.si page. That's the only way to give feedback. I recently removed the option where you can leave a comment, because I think you need to have a Facebook login or Facebook account to post a comment, and I don't even have a Facebook account, so I think it doesn't make a lot of sense to force someone to have Facebook or to filter people who don't have Facebook out of it, so email always works. Let's get on to what I did last week. First of all, I went to a Hackalot meetup, Hackalot is the upcoming maker space, hack space, fab lab thing in Eindhoven in the Netherlands. And it was a really nice meeting. There were about 8 people there and talked mainly about the location, the upcoming location, because now they're searching for a place to actually put their stuff. I'm not a person to automatically seek out social events like this, but this was very nice, so I'll go there next month again. Some time ago I acquired ownership of a very big metal vintage power supply of about 60 centimeters wide, 30 centimeters high and 15 centimeters deep. It was a multi-set made by a company named Luctor in the Netherlands, and from what I read is that they went bankrupt in 1976, so it's probably older than me, it's an old thing. And to be honest, I've been driving around with that thing in the back of my car for about half a year, because I wanted to sell it at a local auction thing, but eventually decided I wanted to use it myself because it looks nice. One thing I've learned over time is when you get unknown equipment or equipment in an unknown state is to open it up before you power it up, because you never know what it is. Also crappy stuff from overseas, where every cent counts, it's best to open it up before connecting it, because you never know what's going on inside. So I did it with this thing as well, open it up, and the construction was really nice. The cables were, everything was mounted to a front panel. Basically, there's a lot of dials, a lot of 4mm banana sockets, analog meters, and everything was connected together with wires, 0.75mm square wires, I think. Really nice build quality. I'll put some pictures in the show notes of this. So what I did was connect a 10 amp load. I think 10 amp is about the maximum that it can give, at least what the analog meter shows. And took an infrared camera and saw what got hot and what didn't get hot inside to see if everything was overheating or not. But everything is fine. There's some big ass diodes in there and everything is big, everything is old and big and chunky. So that was that. To be honest, I'm not sure how long I'm going to keep this one, because I have some other equipment that's equally old and I rarely use it, so maybe at some point I'll give it to an auction anyway. Another thing I did last week was work on the RetroChallenge 2018 April edition project of mine, which is in short, because I talked about this a few times already and could be getting pretty boring. In short, it is a Commodore 64 cartridge adapter sitting in between a Commodore 64 home computer and a game cartridge. Now, the idea is when you power on the home computer, it will display software hosted on the adapter itself, and when you press space, it would switch to the actual game cartridge. So it's like adding an intro crack screen in hardware. Most of the work, pretty much like last time, went into making documentation, simplifying stuff. There is a onboard parallel flash which I tested, which worked fine. Then I made a very small ROM game cartridge image, which actually did nothing more than increment the border color on the screen continuously, flashed that in the flash and stuck the cartridge adapter into a Commodore 64, powered it on and verified that it worked. Then I think I put the only ROM cartridge that I have in the house inside the cartridge adapter and verified that that could run as well. One thing that helped me a lot during testing and development was a small LCD TV, which I got from a thrift store. I think I talked about it last time. It has an AV input, so you can make a cable and connect it to the Commodore 64's video output, and that worked pretty much fine. It's a very small screen, you can hardly read, you cannot really see the individual pixels, but for this stuff it's good enough. Because fact is, I donated most of my Commodore 64 stuff to a friendly organization, and my idea is to eventually get rid of all my retro computer stuff, and if I want to do something with retro computer, for example a project like this, I would go to that place and do it there and basically interact with people and getting more socially involved instead of sitting at home and soldering stuff. Now with this project, as always, there's some stuff I would have done differently if I had to do it again. For example, there's a big fat microcontroller on there driving the flash in parallel. Now I should have taken a smaller microcontroller and shift registers, like in the CPU project that I talked about, because that works very well and it saves in cost, routing is easier, and so on. And some more smaller stuff. Now what I do is for every project I have here, every project is hosted in its separate version control repository thing. So in every project, or for every project, I have a text file, scratch.txt, and in the text file I write down everything that comes to mind, but I should have done, or I should do, or will do in the next revision. So for example, everything I notice with this project that's not optimal, I write down in that text file and do it the next time, if I ever do a next version. Last and probably least thing I did was taking apart a small coffee machine. This is a not too new, not too old coffee machine where you can put either 1 or 2 cups underneath, and there's an on switch and an off switch, and that's basically it. This may not be very interesting to you, maybe something similar to the last time when I took apart a consumer scales. Now I like taking stuff apart like this because the only way for me to learn sometimes is to take it apart, see how everything works exactly, and not stopping it until I find out how everything works, then tossing everything aside and choosing the next thing. And I got this coffee machine exactly for that purpose. Now there's not too much going on inside, so we'll go through the parts briefly. First there's a switch, simple on-off switch with a neon bulb inside. Switch goes to a one-way 175 degrees Celsius thermal fuse. From there we go on to a thermostat, which switches on and off around 100 degrees Celsius. And from there it goes to a heating element, 600 watt heating element, that's about 88 ohms. And 88 ohms at 230 volts would be 600 watts, and from there it goes back to the power inlet basically. Now let's talk a little bit about the heating element, because I never knew exactly how that worked. In this case there was a U-shaped heating element, and behind that was a U-shaped piece of pipe, and one side of the pipe was connected to the water reservoir and the other side was basically open. And what the heating element did was evaporate a little bit of water in the pipe, so it came out as vapor, and then condensed again and dropped into the coffee container thing, and from there into your cup. The heating element was controlled by the thermostat, switching it on and off around 100 degrees Celsius. Now the thermostat itself made a clicky sound when it turned on and off, and I didn't really know how that worked, so I took it apart, and inside was a very thin, round metal disc, dome-shaped like a tactile switch, and I think it has 2 different metals on either side, so if you heat it up, it deforms and clicks basically, and makes contact or breaks a contact inside the switch, inside the thermostat. So that was that. I like taking stuff like this apart because you start with something that you don't understand, or at least I don't understand, then take it apart, make a huge mess, measure around, learn how it works, then throw away everything so you have a clean desk and experience gained and some knowledge gained and peace of mind, so it's very nice. A very big example of something that I don't understand how it works is my car, because I don't understand anything about cars. I never took it apart, I don't work on the car myself, I did see the inside of what was going on under the hood when I was young, when my dad was working in the car, but I don't do that stuff myself because I have no idea how it works. Now I put in the fuel and the car drives and that's it. So until I take it apart or do actual work, I will probably never gonna find out how it works. So maybe I'll do that one day, but until then it's a black box of magic to me. So that was basically that. An upcoming event is, I think I talked about it last time already, was the Vintage Computer Festival Europe in München, which takes place I think 25 and 26 April. I'll put a link in the show notes. Also I'll put a picture of the coffee machine in the show notes and put the link from the previous RetroChallenge project in the show notes. So as for the Vintage Computer Festival, I'm not going there to man a stand because that would mean 2 days of downtime and paying for a hotel and so on, and right now I don't want to do that. So maybe I'm going there one day. So fly there, go to the event and fly back. I'm probably not going to drive because it's 8 hours drive, so we'll see. Maybe I drive together with someone else, maybe I fly with someone else, maybe alone, no idea. Maybe I'll stay at home, we'll see it when we see it. So that was all for now. For more information, links and previous episodes, visit podcast.cba.si. Stay tuned, thanks for listening and goodbye.